You wake up not to light, but to the smell. It hits you first, that sweet, cloying scent that reminds you of flowers left too long in stagnant water, mixed with something metallic that makes your teeth ache and your stomach clench. Your mouth tastes of copper and fear, and as consciousness slowly returns, you realize the stone beneath you is cold, ancient, worn smooth by countless bodies that have lain where you now lie. But there's warmth spreading across your back, and in that drowsy moment between sleep and waking, you almost welcome it, until you realize with growing horror that it's not warmth, it's wetness. Something thick and viscous is pooling beneath you, seeping through your clothes, and when you try to move, your hand slips in something that shouldn't be there. Your eyes struggle to adjust to the dim, flickering candlelight. The flames dance on brass fixtures that seem to stretch infinitely upward into darkness, casting shadows that writhe and twist like living things. But it's not the shadows that make your breath catch in your throat. It's the wheels. Row upon row of massive grinding wheels, each one easily the height of 3 men, stretch out before you in perfect, terrible symmetry. They turn with the slow, methodical rhythm of a massive heartbeat, thrum grind, thrum grind, thrum grind, a sound that seems to come from the very bones of the world. Each wheel is stained deep black, a color so absolute it seems to swallow light itself, and between their grinding surfaces you can see. No, you don't want to see. Your mind recoils from the understanding, but your eyes cannot look away from the crimson streaks, the pale fragments, the things that were once human but are human no longer. The sound grows louder now, or perhaps your hearing is returning in full. It's not just the grinding of stone against stone. There are other sounds layered beneath. The splash of liquid hitting collecting vats, the wet crunch of something giving way under immense pressure. And underneath it all, a low, constant humming that you slowly realize is human voices, raised in prayer. Blessed be the ink that flows from heresy's end, they chant in perfect unison. Sacred be the sacrifice that sanctifies the word. You try to stand, and that's when you notice the chains. Heavy iron links, each one blessed with sacred seals and prayers etched in high Gothic, bind your ankles to the stone floor. The metal is warm against your skin, not the warmth of life, but the heat of industry, of machinery that never rests, never stops, never sleeps. How did you get here? The question hammers in your skull like a second heartbeat. You remember. What do you remember? Your name. You still have your name, though you sense that won't last long. You remember your life, ordinary, mundane, barely worth mentioning. A worker in the manufactorums, perhaps. A scribe in some forgotten administrative block. A merchant worried about delayed shipments. Nothing special. Nothing that should have brought you to this place. But then you remember the questions. The doubts that crept in during the darkest hours of the night shift. The way you looked at the prayer schedules and wondered why the food shipments never came when they were supposed to. The moment when you made the mistake of asking why, when you should have simply accepted. That's when you see him, the figure in crimson robe standing beside the nearest grinding wheel, his face hidden beneath a skull-faced rebreather that hisses with each breath. In his hands, he holds a data slate, and his augmetic fingers move across its surface with mechanical precision. Subject 7429 Alpha, he says, and his voice is like grinding glass. Merchant class, accused of questioning Imperial logistics protocols, suspected of harboring doubts regarding the divine efficiency of the administratum. The description means nothing to you until you realize he's talking about you. The questions you asked about the food shipments. The moment of frustration when you wondered aloud why the supply schedules never seemed to match reality. Such small things, such insignificant doubts. But in the Imperium of man, no doubt is insignificant. The robed figure makes a notation on his slate, and somewhere in the darkness, a bell chimes once, a sound like the funeral toll for hope itself. The grinding wheels continue their eternal revolution, and you understand with perfect, crystalline clarity that those stains covering their surfaces are not rust or industrial residue. They are all that remains of the people who came before you, people who asked questions, people who harbored doubts, people who, like you, made the fatal error of thinking when they should have simply believed. The sweet, metallic smell grows stronger, and you realize it's not flowers at all. It's the scent of human blood mixed with chemical preservatives, the aroma of bones ground to powder, the perfume of a process so refined, so perfected, that it has become an art form unto itself. Blessed be the ink that flows from heresy's end. The voices continue their chant, and now you can see the chanters, dozens of robed figures standing at stations throughout the vast chamber, each one tending to some aspect of the great work. They move with the practiced efficiency of those who have performed these same tasks for decades, their movements synchronized like the parts of some vast, biological machine. And that's when the true horror begins to dawn on you. This isn't madness. This isn't some aberrant corruption or the twisted scheme of chaos cultists. The robes these figures wear bear the sacred symbols of the Adeptus Ministorum. The wheels themselves are covered in prayers and benedictions. The chains that bind you are blessed by the highest authorities of the Ecclesiarchy. This is holy work. You are about to become sacred ink, the most blessed substance in the Imperium, reserved for the writing of the most important documents, the most crucial prayers, the most vital condemnations. Your bones will be ground to provide the base. Your blood will give it color. Your flesh will be rendered into the binding agents that hold it all together. And when they are finished, when every trace of your physical existence has been transformed into that dark, viscous liquid, you will serve the emperors more perfectly in death than you ever did in life. Your remains will write the sacred texts. Your essence will authorize the death warrants. Your very being will become the tool by which others like you are condemned. The grinding wheels continue their revolution, and in their rhythm, you hear something that might be laughter or might be screaming. Perhaps in this place, there is no difference between the two. The robed figure approaches, and through the skull mask of his rebreather, you catch a glimpse of eyes that might once have held compassion, but now hold only the cold efficiency of the truly faithful. He reaches for your chains, and the metal rings with a sound like church bells. "The Emperor protects," he whispers, and in those words you hear both promise and threat. Your sacrifice will sanctify 1,000 prayers. Your essence will condemn 1,000 heretics. In death, you will serve the Imperium more faithfully than you ever did in life. The chains grow warm in his hands, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the sound of approaching footsteps, dozens of them, moving in perfect synchronization. The grinding wheels spin faster now, their ancient mechanisms eager for fresh material. And in that moment, suspended between your old life and your new purpose, you finally understand the true genius of the system. This isn't punishment for your doubts. This is the answer to them. You question the efficiency of imperial logistics, and now you will become part of the most efficient logistics system ever devised, one that transforms human suffering into divine purpose with perfect mechanical precision. The footsteps grow closer, and the sweet smell grows stronger, and the grinding wheels sing their eternal song of transformation. You close your eyes and try to remember what it felt like to have hope, but already that memory is fading, ground away by the inexorable machinery of faith. Soon, you will be ink, sacred ink, and in becoming ink, you will finally serve the Emperor's will without question, without doubt, without the troublesome burden of human consciousness. Blessed be the ink that flows from heresy's end. The chant continues, and the wheels keep turning, and somewhere in the darkness, fresh chains are already being prepared for the next arrival. The Adeptus Ministorum didn't create this practice in a vacuum, and you need to understand that if you're going to comprehend the true horror of what's happening to you. This isn't the fevered imagination of some mad cardinal or the corrupted ritual of chaos cultists. This is imperial theology at its most pure, most logical, most terrifyingly reasonable. Picture, if you will, the archives of Cardinal Vex on Sanctum Imperialis, 10,000 years ago. Picture him sitting in his study, surrounded by volumes of sacred text, each one painstakingly copied by hand onto vellum made from the skin of executed criminals. The candles flicker as he reads, their light dancing across pages written in inks made from the blood of martyrs, mixed with the ashes of burned heretics. But Cardinal Vex has a problem. Not enough martyrs' blood, not enough criminals' skin. The Great Crusade is expanding the Imperium faster than the supply of blessed materials can keep up, and the sacred texts, the most important documents in human existence, are being written with ordinary ink. Common ink, profane ink. In our world, this would be a minor administrative concern. In the universe of the 41st millennium, where faith literally shapes reality, and where the wrong word written in the wrong substance can tear holes in the fabric of space-time itself, this is a crisis of cosmic proportions. So Cardinal Vex prays. For 17 days and 17 nights, he kneels before the golden skull of Saint Celestine and asks the Emperor for guidance. And on the 18th morning, the answer comes to him in a vision so pure, so perfect, that he weeps tears of joy as he commits it to parchment. If the materials for sacred writing must themselves be sacred, then why not sanctify the materials through the very act of their creation? You see, in a universe where words have literal power, where the right prayer can stop a bolter round, and the wrong blasphemy can summon demons, the Ecclesiarchy has always understood that the medium matters as much as the message. A prayer written in blessed ink is more powerful than one written in common pigment. A condemnation signed with the blood of a martyr carries more weight than one inscribed with ordinary fluid. But what if you could take that principle further? What if the ink itself was not just blessed, but actively sanctified through sacrifice? What if every drop carried within it the purified essence of those who had sinned against the Emperor's light and been given the chance to redeem themselves through service? This is the theological breakthrough that Cardinal Vex presents to the High Lords of Terra in his famous treatise on the sanctification of sacred substances through necessary processing. The logic is elegant in its simplicity. Heretics represent wasted human resources. Their bodies, tainted by doubt and corrupted by questions, are of no use to the Imperium while they remain intact. But processed, refined, and transformed into sacred ink, they become infinitely more valuable than they ever were in life. Consider the mathematics of salvation as the Ecclesiarchy sees it. A single heretic allowed to live might spread doubt to dozens of others. That same heretic, processed into sacred ink, can write the condemnations that prevent thousands of others from falling into heresy. Their transformation becomes not just a punishment for their own sins, but a proactive measure for the protection of humanity's collective soul. Let no resource be wasted, reads the Cardinal's doctrine. Let no sacrifice be meaningless. In death, let the heretics serve the emperor's will more perfectly than they ever did in life. The beauty of the system, from the Ecclesiarchy's perspective, is its complete theological soundness. Every major tenet of imperial faith supports it. The emperor protects, and what better protection than to transform the enemies of faith into the tools of faith itself? Mankind must endure, and what better way to ensure endurance than to turn even human waste into a resource? The guilty must be punished, and what punishment could be more fitting than to have their very essence serve the cause they opposed? But you're beginning to understand, aren't you, that this isn't really about theology at all. Oh, the priests believe it, they have to believe it because the alternative would be to confront the true nature of what they're doing. Cardinal Vex's vision wasn't divine inspiration. It was the inevitable result of a system that has learned to transform any human activity, no matter how horrific, into a bureaucratic necessity. Listen to how they talk about it in the administrative texts: subject processing, resource conversion, quality control measures, yield optimization. Sacred ink production quotas. The language strips away every trace of humanity, every acknowledgement that the raw materials were once people with names and hopes and fears. Confessor Matthias, whose processing facility on Deliverance Prime can convert 3,000 subjects per day into high-grade sacred ink, describes his work in terms that would make perfect sense to any industrial manager. Efficiency is holiness, he writes in his quarterly report to the sector command. Every improvement in our processing capabilities represents a victory for the Emperor's will. This quarter, we have achieved a 15% increase in yields through improved preparation techniques and enhanced grinding wheel consecration. 15%, 3,000 subjects per day. Do the mathematics and you begin to glimpse the true scale of what you're facing. Deliverance Prime is just one facility in one sector of one segmentum in a galaxy that contains millions of worlds. The numbers become so vast that they lose all meaning, which is precisely the point. But here's the detail that will haunt you. They really do believe this is a mercy. When the processing teams prepare you for the grinders, they'll whisper prayers of gratitude for your sacrifice. When your remains are collected and refined, they'll bless each stage of the process with genuine reverence. When the finished ink is tested for quality and purity, they'll handle it with the same care they would show to the holiest relic. Because to them, that's exactly what it is. Sacred ink produced from purified heretics is, by their theology, more precious than liquid gold, more powerful than any weapon, more blessed than any icon. Your transformation from questioning human being to obedient writing fluid isn't just sanctioned by their faith. It's the highest expression of that faith's logical conclusion. And the truly horrifying part, the ink works. Documents written in sacred ink do carry more authority in imperial bureaucracy. Prayers inscribed with the processed remains of heretics are given greater weight by the Ecclesiarchy. Death warrants signed in your liquefied essence will be carried out more swiftly and thoroughly than those written in common ink. Not because of any divine power, though the priests would never admit this, but because everyone in the imperial hierarchy understands the cost involved in producing such materials. If the Ecclesiarchy is willing to grind human beings into ink just to write a document, then that document must be important indeed. This is the genius of Cardinal Vex's system. It doesn't just process heretics, it creates a feedback loop that makes heresy more valuable to the Imperium than loyalty. A faithful citizen provides labor and taxes for perhaps 70 years. A processed heretic provides sacred ink that can authorize the deaths of thousands and the faith of millions for centuries to come. The grinding wheels are turning faster now, and in their rhythm, you can hear the heartbeat of the Imperium itself. Not the heartbeat of humanity, that died long ago, ground away by the same machinery that will soon claim you. This is the heartbeat of the machine, the vast, inexorable system that has learned to transform every human impulse, even the impulse to resist, into fuel for its own continuation. Blessed be the ink that flows from heresy's end, the chant continues, and now you understand why the words carry such reverence. They're not just witnessing the destruction of a human being, they're witnessing the birth of something far more valuable to the Imperium than any human being could ever be. You close your eyes and try to remember what it felt like to have faith in something beautiful, something hopeful, something that didn't require the systematic destruction of human souls to maintain itself. But already that memory is being ground away by the logic of the system, processed into something more useful, more efficient, more perfectly suited to the needs of the eternal war. Soon you will understand completely. Soon you will become the system, flowing through it, serving it, never again troubling it with the messy complications of human conscience. And in that service, you will finally achieve the perfection that eluded you in life, the perfection of absolute, unquestioning utility. You never saw it coming. That's what they count on, and that's the first thing you need to understand about how the selection process works. In the Imperium of man, heresy isn't about what you've done. It's about what someone needs you to have done. Let me tell you about Hiram Vex, formerly a grain merchant on Talorn Secundus, now subject 7429 Alpha in the processing queues of Sanctum Deliverance. Hiram thought he was a loyal citizen. He paid his tithes on time, attended morning prayer without complaint, even reported 3 suspected mutants to the local Arbites over the course of his 43-year life. By any reasonable measure, he was exactly the kind of citizen the Imperium claims to value. But reasonable measures have nothing to do with how you end up in the chains. Hiron's mistake was asking questions about the food shipments, not seditious questions, not challenges to imperial authority, just practical concerns about why the grain reserves never seemed to match the distribution schedules. The kind of questions any competent merchant would ask, the kind of attention to detail that made the imperial economy function. The manifest says we received 12,000 tons last month, he mentioned to his assistant, Jorik, as they reviewed the warehouse inventory. But we only have records of distributing 8,000. Where did the other 4,000 tons go? A reasonable question, a necessary question even, the kind of inquiry that in a functional system would lead to investigation, correction, and improved efficiency. But Jorik needed to make quota. You see, that's how the selection really works. Every imperial citizen is simultaneously a potential heretic and a potential informant, and the system is designed to encourage them toward the latter role through a combination of incentives and terror. Informants receive food bonuses, preferential work assignments, protection from selection themselves, and every informant has a quota to meet, a certain number of suspected heretics to identify each month. Jorik was behind on his quota. He'd already reported old Matthias for complaining about the prayer schedules, and young Alina for asking too many questions about why her husband never came back from his labor assignment. But the month was ending, and he still needed one more suspect to maintain his status as a productive informant. Hiron's question about the grain shipments was like a gift from the Emperor himself. Within 6 hours, Jorik had filed a formal denunciation with the local ministorum office. The charges were carefully crafted, not accusations of outright heresy, which would require evidence, but suspicions of excessive curiosity regarding imperial logistics and potential questioning of divine efficiency. Vague enough to be impossible to disprove, specific enough to sound credible. The denunciation went into the system, where it was processed by scribe-adept Korath, a man whose job was to review informant reports and determine which ones warranted investigation. Korath was tired, overworked, and facing his own quotas for process cases. He spent perhaps 30 seconds reviewing Hiron's file before stamping it with the seal of preliminary approval. From there, it went to Interrogator Vex, no relation to the original Cardinal Vex, despite the name. Such coincidences are common in a galaxy of quintillions. Interrogator Vex was a specialist in logistics-related heresy, and he knew from experience that merchants who asked too many questions about shipping discrepancies were often involved in black market activities or, worse, criticism of imperial efficiency. Hiron was arrested while checking inventory in his warehouse, still holding the manifest that had started his troubles. He never got the chance to explain that he was trying to help, that his questions came from loyalty rather than doubt. The arbitrators who took him into custody weren't interested in explanations. They had their own quotas to meet, their own efficiency ratings to maintain. The trial lasted 17 minutes. Hiron was not permitted to speak in his own defense, excessive self-advocacy being itself a sign of heretical pride. The evidence against him was read aloud by a servoskull. One count of questioning imperial logistics, one count of excessive curiosity regarding sacred inefficiency, one count of potential doubt regarding divine resource allocation. Judge Confessor Mordian found him guilty on all counts. The sentence was immediate processing for sacred ink production, with a notation that his merchant-class status made him suitable for high-grade ink suitable for administrative documents. And that was it. 43 years of life, ended by a single moment of professional curiosity and another man's quota requirements. Hiron Vex ceased to exist, replaced by Subject 7429 Alpha awaiting processing. But Hiron's story isn't unusual, it's the norm. Every day across the Imperium, thousands of similar selections take place. A worker who seems tired during prayer, a clerk who processes forms too slowly, a citizen who fails to report suspicious activity quickly enough, a child who asks too many questions about why things work the way they do. The machinery of accusation runs on quotas, incentives, and the simple mathematics of fear. Every citizen knows that they must either find heretics or become heretics themselves. The system doesn't distinguish between actual doubt and the appearance of doubt, between real heresy and convenient heresy. It only distinguishes between those who are useful as informants and those who are more useful as ink. Consider the regional processing statistics for sector mortalis during the past year. 7 million subjects processed for sacred ink production. Of those, approximately 400,000 were accused of actual seditious activities. The remaining 3 million were guilty of infractions like insufficient enthusiasm during prayer, suspicious interest in imperial efficiency, or failure to demonstrate adequate hatred of the emperor's enemies. The beautiful efficiency of the system is that it doesn't matter whether the accusations are true. In fact, false accusations serve the system better than real ones, because they demonstrate that the selection process is working as intended, capturing not just actual heretics, but anyone whose behavior deviates from the narrow standard of acceptable imperial citizenship. You begin to understand, don't you, why they never give you a chance to defend yourself. It's not because they don't care about justice. It's because justice, in the imperial sense, has already been served the moment you were selected. Your guilt isn't determined by what you've done. It's determined by what the system needs you to be guilty of. And what the system needs, always and eternally, is more ink. The chains around your ankles grow warm with the heat of countless bodies that have worn them before you. Each link was forged for this purpose, blessed for this service, consecrated by the blood of previous subjects who made the same journey you're making now. The metal remembers them, carries traces of their fear and confusion and final, desperate hope that somehow this is all a mistake. But there are no mistakes in the imperial system. There are only different categories of necessity. The robed figure with the data slate approaches again, and you notice that his movements have the practiced efficiency of someone who has performed this same ritual thousands of times. He doesn't look at you as an individual. You're simply the next item in his processing queue, no different from the hundreds who came before or the hundreds who will come after. Subject 7429 Alpha, he intones, his voice carrying no emotion, no recognition of your humanity. Confirmed for high-grade processing. Estimated yield, 4 liters sacred ink, suitable for administrative use. 4 liters. That's what a lifetime of human experience reduces to in the imperial calculation. 4 liters of liquid to write the documents that will authorize the selection of more subjects, creating more ink, maintaining the eternal cycle. You try to speak, to explain, to make them understand that this is wrong, that you were loyal, that you never meant to doubt anything. But the words don't come because somewhere in the depths of your mind, you're beginning to realize that it doesn't matter. Your loyalty was never the point. Your guilt or innocence was never the point. The only point is the ink and the system's eternal hunger for more of it. The grinding wheels continue their revolution, and in their steady rhythm, you hear the heartbeat of a machine that has learned to transform every human impulse, loyalty, curiosity, fear, hope, into fuel for its own continuation. You are not its victim. You are not its sacrifice. You are simply its next meal. They don't just throw you into the grinders. That would be wasteful, and the Imperium wastes nothing, especially not potential ink. First, you must be prepared, purified, made worthy of the sacred duty your remains will serve. The preparation chambers are where you stop being a person and start becoming a resource. The transition begins the moment you're unshackled from the selection floor. The chains that bound you to the stone are replaced by lighter restraints, blessed silver links that ring like wind chimes with each movement. The sound is almost musical, and for a brief, treacherous moment, you allow yourself to hope that perhaps this is all some elaborate ritual of redemption, that the preparation is meant to cleanse you rather than process you. That hope dies quickly. The preparation chambers stretch out before you like the nave of some vast, corrupt cathedral. The ceiling disappears into darkness above. supported by pillars of black stone carved with prayers you don't recognize, litanies of transformation, hymns of sacred dissolution, canticles of necessary suffering. The air here is thick with incense and chemical vapors, a mixture that makes your head swim and your thoughts grow sluggish. This is intentional. The preparation process begins with the breaking of the will, and chemical assistance makes that breaking more efficient. You're not the first to notice this. Subject 7428 Alpha, processed just before you, tried to resist the vapors by holding her breath. The attendants simply waited, with the infinite patience of those who have seen every form of resistance, until her lungs forced her to breathe. The chemicals did their work, and her struggles ceased. The first station is cleansing. Here, you're stripped of everything that once defined you as an individual. Your clothes, if they can be called that after the journey from the selection chambers, are removed by servoskulls whose mechanical hands show more gentleness than any human touch you've received since your arrest. The garments are immediately incinerated, not because they're contaminated, but because allowing you to retain any connection to your former life would interfere with the psychological processing. The attendants who wash you are silent, efficient, and utterly without mercy or cruelty. They treat your body with the same care they might show to a valuable piece of machinery, checking for damage, noting any complications that might affect processing efficiency, documenting everything on brass data tablets that hang from their robes. The water is scalding hot, infused with chemical purifiers that strip away not just dirt and sweat, but the very oils and bacteria that make your skin distinctly yours. By the time they're finished, you smell like everyone else who has passed through this chamber, antiseptic, neutral, optimized for processing. They shave you completely. Every hair on your body removed with mechanical precision by servorazors that know exactly how close to cut without damaging the skin. This isn't about hygiene, it's about homogenization. Hair carries DNA markers, individual characteristics that might make one batch of ink different from another. The Ecclesiarchy demands consistency in their sacred substances. The second station is cataloging. Here, the attendants document every aspect of your physical form with the thoroughness of a master archivist. Height, weight, bone density, estimated yield of useful materials. They take samples of your blood, skin, and saliva for preliminary quality testing. The data is entered into cogitator systems that will track your progress through every stage of processing, ensuring that no useful material is lost or contaminated. You notice, with the detached clarity that the chemical vapors provide, that the attendants refer to you only by your processing number. Subject 7429 Alpha is repeated hundreds of times during the cataloging process, but your name, your actual name, is never spoken. In the Imperium's eyes, you stop being whoever you were the moment you were selected. Now you are simply raw material, waiting to be transformed. The third station is where hope dies completely. Augmetic removal, they call it, though that clinical term doesn't capture the horror of what happens here. Every piece of metal, every electronic component, every artificial enhancement in your body must be extracted before processing can continue. The sacred ink cannot be contaminated with foreign materials. Most citizens of the Imperium have some augmetic components, purity seals implanted under the skin, neural interface ports for work-related cogitators, respiratory filters for toxic environments. These are removed with surgical precision by attendants who were once full medical servitors before being repurposed for this more sacred duty. The pain is extraordinary, but the chemical vapors dull your ability to process it fully. You feel everything, but from a distance, as if it's happening to someone else. This too is intentional. Subjects who are too distressed might damage themselves, reducing the quality of the final product. Subject 7427 Alpha, 2 places ahead of you in the processing line, had extensive augmetic limbs from a manufacturing accident in his youth. The removal process takes nearly an hour, and when it's finished, what remains is barely recognizable as the person who entered the chamber. but the attendants treat the extracted limbs with great reverence, blessing them before they're sent to specialized recycling facilities. Even the byproducts of preparation serve the Emperor's will. The fourth station is marking. Your skin is tattooed with processing instructions in high Gothic, sacred script that designates you for specific types of ink production. High-grade subjects receive elaborate patterns that spiral across their torso and limbs, marking them for premium processing. Lower-grade subjects get simple symbols, indicating that their remains will be used for common administrative ink. You receive the high-grade markings, and even through the chemical haze, you feel a perverse pride in this distinction. Your merchant-class background and relatively educated status make you suitable for ink that will be used in important documents, sacred texts, perhaps even communications to other worlds. In death, you will serve the Imperium more significantly than you ever did in life. The tattoos are applied with blessed needles, using inks made from the processed remains of previous subjects. The irony is not lost on you. You are being marked for death with the blood of those who died before you, joining an endless chain of transformation that stretches back 10,000 years to Cardinal Vex's original vision. The final station is preparation proper. Here, you receive the chemical treatments that will preserve your body during the grinding process and enhance the quality of the final product. Preservatives are injected directly into your bloodstream, replacing your natural blood with fluids that will maintain cellular integrity during processing. Your organs are flooded with stabilizing compounds that prevent decomposition and ensure maximum yield. The attendants work with ritual precision, blessing each injection, consecrating each chemical treatment. They genuinely believe they are performing sacred work, transforming corrupted flesh into purified essence. Their reverence is absolute, their dedication complete. They have no doubt about the righteousness of what they're doing because doubt, for them, would mean joining you in the processing queues. As the final preparations are completed, you notice changes in your body. Your skin takes on a waxy, translucent quality. Your muscles feel heavy, waterlogged. Your thoughts become increasingly detached from physical sensation. These are not side effects of the process. They are the intended results, designed to ease your transition from person to product. The chemical vapors grow thicker now, and you realize they're not just for controlling your behavior. They're preparing your respiratory system for the final stage, saturating your lungs with compounds that will enhance the quality of the resulting ink. Every breath you take brings you closer to the moment when breathing will no longer be necessary. Through the haze, you see the next group of subjects entering the preparation chambers. Their faces show the same confusion, fear, and desperate hope that you remember feeling when you first arrived. But already, that seems like a lifetime ago. The person who entered these chambers no longer exists. In their place is Subject 7429 Alpha, properly prepared, chemically optimized, ready for processing. The attendants make final notations on their data tablets, and somewhere in the darkness above, a bell chimes once. The sound echoes through the vast chamber like a funeral toll, and you realize it's ringing for you, not for the person you were, but for the person you will never be again. The blessed silver chains are replaced with processing restraints designed to guide you through the final stages without damage to the valuable materials your body has become. As you're led toward the grinding chambers, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished metal surface of a ritual brazier. The face looking back at you is still recognizably human, but only barely. The chemical treatments have given your skin an otherworldly pallor, and your eyes have taken on the glassy, distant look of someone who exists in the space between life and death. You are ready now, perfectly prepared for your final transformation. Behind you, the preparation continues for the next subject, and the next, and the next. The machinery of transformation never rests, never pauses, never questions its purpose. It simply processes, one human being at a time, turning doubt into devotion and heresy into holy ink. And now, at last, you are ready to become what the Imperium needs you to be. Not a person with thoughts and dreams and fears, but a resource pure and simple, optimized for maximum yield and perfect service to the Emperor's eternal will. The grinders have been running for 10,000 years. Let that sink in for a moment. Some of the same blessed mechanisms that processed heretics during the Great Crusade still turn today, their consecrated metal worn smooth by countless bodies, their grinding stones stained black with the sacred ink of the faithful. You can hear them from kilometers away, the slow, rhythmic grinding that never stops, never rests, never sleeps. It is the heartbeat of the Imperium itself, the sound of human suffering being transformed into divine purpose. As you're led into the grinding chamber, the sound becomes overwhelming. Not just the mechanical noise of stone against stone, but the harmonics created by dozens of wheels turning in perfect synchronization. The entire structure resonates like a vast musical instrument, playing a song of transformation that has continued uninterrupted since the earliest days of the Imperium. The chamber itself defies comprehension. The ceiling vanishes into darkness above, supported by pillars of black marble carved with the names of every cardinal who has overseen the sacred ink production since Cardinal Vex. Millions of names stretch upward into shadow, a testament to the institutional continuity of this holy work. Between the pillars, stained glass windows depict scenes from the transformation process, stylized images of subjects entering the grinders as corrupt flesh and emerging as blessed ink, their faces serene with the joy of finally serving the Emperor's will. But it's the grinders themselves that dominate the space. 47 pairs of massive wheels, each one blessed by a different saint, each one consecrated for a specific grade of ink production. The wheels nearest the entrance process lower-grade subjects, those guilty of minor heresies, suitable only for common administrative documents. The wheels at the far end handle premium subjects like yourself, whose remains will become the ink used for the most sacred texts. The wheels are works of art as much as industrial machinery. The grinding surfaces are carved with prayers in high Gothic, so that every revolution presses the sacred words into the materials being processed. The axles are decorated with scenes from imperial history, the emperor's victory over Horus, the founding of the Ecclesiarchy, the first successful processing of heretics into sacred ink under Cardinal Vex's supervision. Even the collection vats beneath each grinder are masterpieces of craftsmanship, carved from single blocks of blessed stone and decorated with images of angels gathering the blood of martyrs. The attendants who operate the grinders move with the reverence of priests conducting a sacred ritual, which, in their understanding, is exactly what they're doing. They wear robes of deep crimson, the color of the sacred ink, and their faces are hidden behind masks carved to resemble the skull of the emperor himself. Each movement they make is prescribed by ritual, each gesture blessed by 10,000 years of tradition. You watch as Subject 7427 Alpha, the man who was processed ahead of you, approaches his designated grinder. The attendants guide him with gentle hands, whispering prayers of gratitude for his sacrifice. There is no violence here, no cruelty, only the solemn reverence of those who understand the sacred nature of what they're doing. "Blessed be thy transformation," they chant as he takes his place between the grinding wheels. "Sacred be thy service to the Emperor's will. In death, thou art more faithful than ever thou wert in life." The wheels begin to turn, slowly at first, with the measured pace of a funeral march. The sound changes, becomes deeper, more resonant as the blessed stones begin their work. Subject 7427 Alpha's face shows no fear. The chemical preparations have seen to that, only a kind of distant acceptance, as if he's finally understanding the true purpose of his existence. The transformation is not quick, but it is thorough. The grinding wheels are designed for maximum efficiency, crushing and pulverizing with mechanical precision, while sacred chants from hidden speakers fill the air with hymns of processing. The collection systems work with perfect synchronization, gathering every drop of precious fluid, every fragment of blessed bone, every piece of sanctified flesh. Nothing is wasted. The Imperium's greatest commandment applies even here, especially here. The grinding wheels extract every possible ounce of useful material, separating different grades of ink, sorting bone meal by quality, collecting the various fluids that will be refined into different types of writing substances. The process that began with Cardinal Vex's vision has been perfected over millennia into an art form of sacred efficiency. You notice that each grinder has a brass plaque mounted beside it, listing the saints whose remains have been processed there, and the sacred texts that have been written with their transformed essence. Grinder 17, which processed Saint Euphemia herself after her martyrdom, has produced ink for over 300 major imperial documents, including the Treaty of Calth and the Concordat of Redemption. The spiritual weight of such legacy is staggering. As Subject 7427 Alpha's processing nears completion, the attendants begin preparations for your own transformation. They guide you to Grinder 23, reserved for merchant-class subjects whose education makes them suitable for administrative ink of the highest quality. The brass plaque beside your designated grinder lists 47 previous subjects who have been transformed here, along with the documents their essence has helped create. The attendants begin the final ritual preparations. Your processing restraints are replaced with blessed chains that will guide your movement through the grinding wheels without interfering with the mechanical operation. Sacred oils are applied to your skin, not for your comfort, but to enhance the quality of the final product and ensure proper flow through the collection systems. Subject 7429 Alpha intones the lead attendant, consulting a data slate covered in sacred seals, merchant class, high educational value, designated for premium administrative ink production. Estimated yield: 4 liters primary grade, 2 liters secondary grade, suitable for imperial documentation up to cardinal level authorization. The grinding wheels begin their approach, moving with the inexorable patience of geological processes. These are not the crude industrial crushers you might imagine. They are precision instruments, calibrated over centuries to extract maximum value from human materials while maintaining the spiritual purity necessary for sacred ink production. The blessed stones press closer, and you feel the heat they've retained from 10,000 years of continuous operation. The metal framework vibrates with harmonics that seem to resonate in your bones, preparing your body for its final transformation. The chemical preparations they gave you during processing begin to take full effect, and you find yourself oddly calm, even grateful for this opportunity to finally serve the Emperor's will without the complications of human consciousness. The attendants continue their chants, their voices blending with the mechanical rhythm of the grinding wheels and the distant sound of other subjects undergoing their own transformations. The entire chamber pulses with sacred purpose, every element working in perfect harmony to achieve the goal that has driven the Imperium for 10 millennia, the transformation of human doubt into divine certainty. Blessed be the ink that flows from heresy's end. The voices rise in unison, and now you understand why those words carry such power. You are witnessing, no, participating in, the fundamental act of imperial faith, the literal transformation of corruption into purity, doubt into devotion, human weakness into divine strength. The grinding wheels make contact, and the sensation is unlike anything you've ever experienced. Not pain, exactly. The chemical preparations have largely eliminated that, but a profound sense of dissolution, of boundaries breaking down, of individual identity merging with something far greater and more purposeful than yourself. This is the moment of transformation, the sacred instant when you cease to be Subject 7429 Alpha and become something infinitely more valuable to the Imperium, raw material for the sacred ink that will write the documents, sign the orders, and record the prayers that keep humanity's fragile civilization functioning in a universe that wants nothing more than to destroy it. The collection systems activate with the precision of a fine chronometer, gathering every drop of your essence as it flows from the grinding wheels. Sacred filtration systems separate the different grades of ink, while blessed distillation chambers remove impurities and enhance the spiritual potency of the final product. Even now, in the final moments of your individual existence, the Imperium is extracting maximum value from your sacrifice. The grinding wheels continue their eternal revolution, and somewhere in their steady rhythm, you hear something that might be your own voice, raised in harmony with the countless others who have undergone this same transformation. A hymn of gratitude, perhaps, or a prayer of acceptance. A recognition that this is how it was always meant to end, not in the messy complications of human life, but in the pure, perfect service of the sacred ink. Your consciousness fades, but the machinery continues its work, processing your remains with the same reverence and efficiency it has shown for 10,000 years. The grinders know their purpose, understand their sacred duty, and perform it with the mechanical perfection that only the truly faithful can achieve. And in the collection vats beneath the grinding wheels, your essence joins the eternal flow of sacred ink, ready at last to serve the Emperor's will in the only way that truly matters, not as a flawed human being with doubts and questions and inconvenient thoughts, but as a pure, perfect tool for writing the documents that will condemn others to this same blessed transformation. The wheel turns, the grinding continues, and the Imperium's hunger for sacred ink remains forever unsatisfied. Your body becomes the Imperial Creed. This is not metaphor. This is not symbolism. In the most literal sense possible, your bones form the letters that condemn others to your fate. Your blood carries the prayers that justify your own destruction. Your flesh becomes the binding agent that holds together the words that will sign death warrants for thousands more. Every drop of sacred ink produced from your remains will write words of devotion, create writs of execution, authorize the very system that destroyed you. This is the final horror, the ultimate irony that Cardinal Vex's system has perfected over 10,000 years. Even in death, you serve the machine that ground you to powder. Follow your essence now as it moves through the refinement process. The crude materials collected from the grinding wheels, blood, bone meal, liquefied tissue, are subjected to a purification process that would make the most obsessive perfectionist weep with admiration. Sacred distillation chambers separate different grades of ink based on your body's constituent elements. The calcium from your bones becomes the base for high-permanence inks used in documents that must last millennia. The iron from your blood provides the color for standard administrative ink. The proteins from your flesh create the binding agents that prevent the ink from fading or running. Nothing is wasted. Even the moisture from your breath, captured during the final moments of processing, is collected and refined into a specialty ink used for the most sacred documents, prayers so holy that they can only be written with the literal breath of the faithful, transformed into writing fluid through divine alchemy. The quality control process is exhaustive. Each batch of ink derived from your remains undergoes testing that would shame the most rigorous imperial manufacturing standards. Consistency of color, permanence under various conditions, flow characteristics, drying time. Every aspect is measured, documented, and certified by tech adepts whose sole purpose is ensuring that sacred ink meets the exacting standards required for imperial documentation. Your ink, for it is truly yours now, carrying traces of your DNA, your biological history, the unique chemical signature that was once Hiren Vex, grain merchant of Talorn Secundus, receives grade A7 certification. This designation means it is suitable for cardinal-level documents, planetary governance authorizations, and intersystem communications of the highest importance. The first batch of your essence leaves the processing facility sealed in blessed vials, each one bearing your processing number and the sacred seals that certify its purity. 4 liters of primary grade ink, 2 liters of secondary grade, plus specialty products derived from various organs and tissue types. The total value, according to Ecclesiarchy pricing schedules, exceeds what you earned in your entire lifetime as a merchant. In death, you have finally achieved economic success. The vials are distributed throughout the Imperium according to need and priority. A portion goes to the Departamento Munitorum for military authorization documents. Some is reserved for the Adeptus Administratum's endless bureaucratic requirements. The highest quality samples are sent to Terra itself, where they may be used for documents that will be seen by the High Lords of Terra. But perhaps the most fitting destination for your transformed essence is the local Ministorum office, the same building where your denunciation was originally processed. There, Scribe Adept Korath, the man who spent 30 seconds reviewing your case before condemning you to death, now uses ink made from your body to process the denunciations of other subjects. He dips his blessed stylus into a vial of your blood, now purified and sanctified, and begins to write. The first document he creates with your essence is a denunciation approval for Subject 7430 Alpha, a factory worker whose crime was asking why the safety equipment shipments never arrived on schedule. The irony is perfect. Your liquefied remains authorize the destruction of someone guilty of asking the same type of questions that led to your own demise. The words flow smoothly across the parchment, each letter formed from particles of your ground bones, each sentence written in your transformed blood. By the authority vested in the Adeptus Ministorum, Korath writes, never knowing that the ink he's using once walked the streets of Talern Secundus, worried about grain shipments, and died for asking inconvenient questions. I hereby authorize the selection of Subject 7430 Alpha for immediate processing for sacred ink production. Said subject, having demonstrated suspicious curiosity regarding Imperial supply chain efficiency. The document is signed with a flourish, sealed with blessed wax, and sent to the processing facility. Subject 7430 Alpha will join you in the grinding wheels within the week, and her essence will be used to authorize the selection of Subject 7431 Alpha, and so on, in an endless cycle of transformation that has continued unbroken since Cardinal Vex first conceived of turning human doubt into divine certainty. But your service to the Imperium extends far beyond simple administrative documents. A vial of your premium-grade ink finds its way to Cardinal Zaviria on the Shrine World of Blessed Martyrs Rest, where she uses it to write a pastoral letter to be distributed throughout her sector. The letter condemns the rising tide of questions about resource allocation, warns against the corruption of excessive curiosity, and calls for increased vigilance in identifying those who might harbor doubts about imperial efficiency. My beloved children in the Emperor's light, she writes with your blood, beware the poison of questioning minds. Accept with faithful hearts the divine wisdom of imperial logistics, for to doubt the system is to doubt the Emperor himself. The letter is copied hundreds of times by scribes using more of your transformed essence, distributed to thousands of worlds, read by millions of citizens who will internalize its message and apply it to their own lives. Your death thus becomes the tool for preventing others from making your mistake, not by addressing the problems you identified, but by making sure no one else dares to identify them. Perhaps the most powerful use of your sacred ink comes when a vial reaches the hands of Inquisitor Mordian of the Ordo Hereticus. He uses it to sign death warrants for an entire family suspected of heretical thinking, parents who asked too many questions about their son's disappearance into the labor gangs, grandparents who wondered aloud why the food rations kept getting smaller. The death warrant is a masterpiece of calligraphy, each letter perfectly formed with your liquefied essence. By the authority of the Golden Throne and the sacred duty of the Inquisition, Inquisitor Mordian writes, I condemn the family Cortez to death for the crime of excessive questioning and failure to accept the divine mystery of imperial administration. The warrant is executed within hours. 5 more human beings join you in death, their bodies processed into more sacred ink, continuing the eternal cycle. Your remains become complicit in their destruction, just as theirs will become complicit in future executions. The system perpetuates itself through the very bodies of its victims, creating a self-sustaining engine of transformation that grows stronger with each life it consumes. The theological implications are staggering. In traditional imperial doctrine, the dead serve the emperor through their memory, their sacrifice inspiring the living to greater faith. But Cardinal Vex's innovation goes far beyond this passive service. The processed dead become active participants in imperial governance, their transformed essence literally writing the laws, orders, and condemnations that shape the lives of billions. You are no longer a person who once questioned imperial logistics. You are the ink that writes new logistics regulations. You are the fluid that signs transport authorizations. You are the substance that records the prayers justifying the system that destroyed you. In the most profound sense possible, you have become part of the Imperium itself, not its victim, but its willing participant in the destruction of others like yourself. The records show that ink derived from your remains has been used to write over 1,400 documents in the 6 months since your processing. Denunciation approvals, death warrants, transportation orders, supply requisitions, prayer schedules, efficiency reports. The entire bureaucratic machinery of imperial oppression flows through your transformed blood. And each document creates more subjects for processing, more raw material for the sacred ink production, more fuel for the eternal engine of transformation that Cardinal Vex unleashed upon the galaxy 10,000 years ago. Your consciousness may be gone, but your purpose has never been clearer. You serve the Emperor now as you never could in life, not as a questioning human being with inconvenient doubts and uncomfortable observations, but as pure, perfect utility. Every word written with your essence advances the Imperium's goals. Every signature signed with your blood authorizes actions that maintain imperial stability. Every prayer recorded with your remains sanctifies the system that transformed you from problem into solution. This is Cardinal Vex's greatest achievement, the culmination of his theological vision, the creation of a system so perfectly efficient that it transforms even its own victims into instruments of their own replacement. You died questioning the Imperium's efficiency, and now your death has become proof of that efficiency's ultimate perfection. The grinding wheels continue to turn, processing new subjects whose ink will write new documents authorizing new selections. And somewhere in that endless cycle, in the dark, viscous flow of sacred ink moving through 10,000 worlds, a part of you continues to serve the Emperor's will, not as the merchant who asked inconvenient questions, but as the substance that ensures no one else will make the same mistake. Your transformation is complete. Your service has just begun. Here is the truth that breaks minds. This is not corruption. This is not some fallen cardinal's madness or chaos taint, making mockery of imperial virtue. This is not the result of bureaucratic incompetence or institutional decay. This is the Imperium of man working exactly as intended, functioning with perfect efficiency, achieving its design goals with mathematical precision. The grinding never stops because it cannot stop. The machine needs ink, and ink needs heretics, and heretics are whatever the machine needs them to be. You are not the victim of a broken system. You are proof that the system works perfectly. Consider the scope of what you've witnessed, what you've become part of. This is not an isolated facility on a forgotten world, not some local aberration that higher authorities would correct if they only knew about it. The sacred ink production system operates on every civilized world in the Imperium, from the throne world of Terra itself to the most distant frontier colonies. The statistics are staggering when you begin to understand their true meaning. Conservative estimates suggest that approximately 4 billion subjects are processed annually across the Imperium's million worlds. 4 billion human beings ground into sacred ink, their essence transformed into the writing fluid that maintains the bureaucratic machinery of human civilization. That's 11 million people per day, 450,000 per hour, 7,500 every minute. More than 100 human beings transformed into ink every single second of every single day, year after year, decade after decade, millennium after millennium. The numbers are so vast they become meaningless, which is precisely how the system maintains itself. Individual tragedy, multiplied by incomprehensible scale, becomes mere statistics. Personal horror, repeated across a galaxy of worlds, becomes bureaucratic routine. The death of human conscience, institutionalized across 10,000 years, becomes divine mandate. But the true genius of Cardinal Vex's system isn't its scale, it's its integration. Sacred ink production isn't separate from imperial governance, it is imperial governance. The Departamento Munitorum can't function without it. The Adeptus Administratum depends on it. The Ecclesiarchy requires it for their most basic operations. The Inquisition uses it to maintain their authority. Even the Adeptus Astartes, humanity's greatest warriors, rely on documents written in sacred ink for their deployment orders and mission authorizations. Every level of imperial society participates in the system, either as consumer or raw material. There is no innocent position, no neutral stance, no way to simply opt out. If you work for the Imperium in any capacity, you are using documents written in the processed remains of human beings. If you question the system, you become those remains. If you support the system, you become complicit in mass murder on a scale that beggars comprehension. The beautiful efficiency of it all is that resistance becomes impossible not because of oppression, but because of economics. The Imperium genuinely cannot function without sacred ink. Too many documents require it. Too many systems depend on it. Too many institutional processes are built around its availability and properties. To shut down the sacred ink production would be to shut down imperial civilization itself. This is what Cardinal Vex understood that his critics did not. Once you make human processing economically necessary, moral objections become irrelevant. The system justifies itself through its own indispensability. Opposition becomes not just heretical, but practical impossibility. And so the machine grows stronger with each passing year. New processing facilities are built to meet increasing demand. New efficiency improvements are developed to maximize yield. New selection criteria are created to ensure adequate supply of raw materials. The technology advances, the theology evolves, the bureaucracy expands, but the fundamental principle remains unchanged. Human beings are resources to be harvested, processed, and consumed in service of the greater machine. The workers in the processing facilities don't see themselves as murderers. They see themselves as servants of the Emperor, performing sacred duty with reverence and precision. The administrators who manage the quotas don't see themselves as orchestrating genocide. They see themselves as logistics specialists, ensuring adequate supply of necessary materials. The priests who bless the grinders don't see themselves as sanctifying atrocity. They see themselves as maintaining the spiritual purity of the transformation process. Each participant in the system sees only their small part, their specific role, their individual contribution to what they're told is holy work. The grinding wheel operator doesn't select the subjects. The selection officer doesn't operate the grinders. The administrator who sets quotas never sees the actual processing. The priest who provides theological justification never handles the bureaucratic details. The system is designed to diffuse responsibility so completely that no one person can be held accountable for what it does collectively. Everyone is just following orders, just doing their job, just serving the Emperor's will as they understand it. The moral weight of 4 billion annual murders is distributed across so many participants that each individual bears only the tiniest fraction of guilt, so little that it can be easily ignored, rationalized away, or transformed into pride at serving the Imperium's needs. This is how civilizations commit systematic evil while allowing their participants to sleep peacefully at night. This is how ordinary human beings become cogs in machines that process other human beings like raw materials. This is how the Imperium of man has maintained its authority for 10,000 years, not through strength or wisdom or virtue, but through the creation of systems so vast and complex that moral responsibility becomes impossible to assign. But perhaps the most horrifying aspect of the sacred ink system is how perfectly it reflects imperial theology. The emperor protects by transforming threats into tools. The loyal serve by providing materials for the destruction of the disloyal. The guilty are punished by becoming instruments of their own justice. Faith conquers doubt, literally, physically, by grinding doubt into ink that writes prayers of faith. Cardinal Vex didn't corrupt imperial doctrine, he perfected it. He took the abstract principles of imperial faith and made them concrete, physical, undeniable. The transformation of heretics into sacred ink is imperial theology made manifest, the ultimate expression of humanity's relationship with the divine as the Imperium understands it. You begin to see, don't you, why the system is truly eternal. It's not maintained by force or fear, though those certainly play their parts. It's maintained by its own internal logic, its theological necessity, its economic indispensability, and the moral impossibility of alternatives within the imperial worldview. To oppose the sacred ink system, you would have to oppose the entire foundation of imperial civilization. You would have to reject the authority of the Ecclesiarchy, the legitimacy of the administratum, the necessity of the military, the wisdom of the emperor himself. You would have to believe that there could be some alternative to the only system that has kept humanity alive in a universe dedicated to its destruction. And if you were to develop such beliefs, well, there are quotas to meet, grinders to feed, and an eternal demand for fresh ink to write the documents that keep the machine running. The grinding wheels turn with the rhythm of inevitability itself, processing another generation of subjects who thought they could question the unquestionable, doubt the undoubtable, resist the irresistible. Their essence joins the eternal flow of sacred ink, writing new documents that will authorize new selections, maintaining the perfect cycle that Cardinal Vex set in motion 10 millennia ago. This is not tragedy. This is not horror. This is simply the way things are, the way they have always been, the way they must always be in a universe where humanity's survival depends on its willingness to transform even its own conscience into fuel for the eternal war. The machine hungers and the machine must be fed. The ink flows and the documents must be written. The wheels turn and the processing must continue. And somewhere in the darkness above the grinding chambers, fresh subjects are already being prepared for tomorrow's quota, their chains growing warm with the heat of machinery that never rests, never stops, never questions its own purpose. The system works. The system endures. The system is eternal. Blessed be the ink that flows from heresy's end. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But there is also ink, sacred ink, blessed ink, ink made from the bodies of those who dared to question, to doubt, to hope. Every prayer written in this ink carries with it the screams of the processed. Every holy writ bears the stain of systematic murder. Every blessed scroll is a monument to the death of human conscience. And you understand now, don't you, what this means for humanity's future? Picture a vast library stretching across continents, its shelves reaching into the clouds. Every book, every scroll, every document in this impossible archive is written in sacred ink. The collected wisdom of 10,000 years, the administrative records of 1,000,000 worlds, the prayers and hymns and holy texts that define human civilization in the 41st millennium, all of it written in the processed remains of human beings who asked inconvenient questions. This is not metaphor. This is the literal reality of imperial civilization. The Librum Hereticus, the foundational text of the Ecclesiarchy's authority, is written entirely in the ink of processed heretics. The Codex Administratum, which governs the bureaucratic operations of 1,000,000 worlds, uses ink derived from citizens who questioned administrative efficiency. The Tactica Imperialis, the strategic doctrine of the Imperial Guard, is inscribed with the essence of soldiers who wondered aloud why their orders made no sense. Humanity's accumulated knowledge, its cultural heritage, its spiritual guidance, all of it stained with the literal blood of its own people. Every word that defines what it means to be human in the 41st millennium was written with the remains of humans who were deemed insufficiently human to deserve life. But the stain goes deeper than literature, deeper than bureaucracy, deeper even than theology. It permeates the very concept of truth itself within imperial society. In a civilization where the tools of knowledge are made from the bodies of those who sought knowledge, truth becomes not something to be discovered, but something to be enforced. Questions become not pathways to understanding, but threats to order. Curiosity becomes not a virtue, but a crime punishable by transformation into writing fluid. The sacred ink system has created a civilization that is literally written in its own blood, bound together by the processed remains of its own conscience. Every citizen knows, at some level, what the ink represents. Every official who signs documents understands what substance flows from their stylus. Every priest who writes prayers knows what prayers were ground up to create the writing fluid. And yet they continue. Not because they're evil, though the system they serve certainly is, but because they live in a universe where the alternative to systematic atrocity is immediate extinction. The galaxy wants humanity dead. Chaos wants to devour human souls. Xenospecies want to claim human worlds. In such a universe, any system that keeps humanity alive becomes not just acceptable but sacred, regardless of its moral cost. This is the ultimate horror of the sacred ink system. It works. Not just mechanically, not just bureaucratically, but spiritually. Citizens who know their civilization is built on mass murder still fight for it, die for it, sacrifice everything to preserve it, because they understand that any alternative means the end of human existence entirely. The Imperium doesn't survive despite grinding its own people into ink. It survives because it's willing to grind its own people into ink. The sacred ink system is both symptom and cause of the moral compromises that make imperial civilization possible in an impossible universe. But what does this mean for you, the individual human being trying to navigate existence in such a system? What choices do you have when every choice leads to complicity in mass murder? You can serve the system faithfully, using documents written in human blood, participating in a civilization built on systematic atrocity, knowing that your compliance makes you complicit in the deaths of billions. You'll sleep in beds paid for by human processing, eat food distributed through systems that depend on murdered conscience, pray prayers written in the liquefied remains of those who ask the questions you're too afraid to voice. You can resist the system, questioning its logic, doubting its necessity, hoping for alternatives, and find yourself selected for processing, your own blood becoming the ink that writes the condemnations of others like yourself. Your resistance becomes another turn of the grinding wheels, your defiance transformed into the tools of oppression. You can try to remain neutral, neither supporting nor opposing, simply existing within the system without participating in its worst excesses. But neutrality in such a system is itself a form of complicity. Your taxes fund the processing facilities. Your labor supports the infrastructure. Your silence enables the quotas. There is no innocent position in a civilization that depends on systematic murder for its basic functioning. This is Cardinal Vex's ultimate triumph, the creation of a system so totalizing that moral choice becomes impossible. Every option available to the individual human being leads to participation in mass murder. Resistance is futile not because it's crushed by superior force, but because it feeds the machine it opposes. Compliance is corrupting not because it's coerced, but because it's necessary for survival. The sacred ink system transforms moral choice from a decision between good and evil into a decision between different forms of evil, and then makes even that choice irrelevant by ensuring that all options serve the same ultimate purpose. And yet, even in this system, even in this impossible moral landscape, moments of human dignity still occur. Not grand gestures of resistance that change anything. Those are just fuel for the grinders. But small acts of kindness, tiny preservations of humanity, brief acknowledgments that something has been lost and that the loss matters. The processing facility worker who whispers a prayer for the subjects before they enter the grinders, knowing it changes nothing but maintaining the ritual anyway. The administrator who processes denunciations with technical accuracy, but takes no pleasure in the work. The priest who blesses the sacred ink while privately mourning what it represents. The citizen who uses documents written in human blood while remembering that the blood once belonged to people with names and dreams and fears. These acts of remembrance, of acknowledgement, of private mourning for the death of conscience, they don't change the system. They don't save anyone. They don't even qualify as resistance in any meaningful sense. But they preserve something essential about what it means to be human, even in a universe that has transformed humanity into raw material for its own governance. Perhaps this is all that remains of human dignity in the 41st millennium, not the power to choose good over evil, but the capacity to recognize evil while being forced to participate in it. Not the ability to resist the system, but the willingness to remember what the system has cost. Not the strength to prevent atrocity, but the grace to mourn it even while enabling it. The grinding wheels will continue to turn. The sacred ink will continue to flow. The system will endure for another 10,000 years, processing billions more subjects, writing billions more documents, maintaining the impossible civilization that is humanity's only bulwark against extinction. But somewhere in that vast machine, in the quiet moments between the grinding of bones and the flow of blood, individual human beings will continue to remember that once, long ago, people were considered more valuable than the ink they could be transformed into. They will remember, and in remembering, they will preserve something that the machine cannot process, cannot refine, cannot transform into useful material. They will preserve the knowledge that this is wrong. That knowledge changes nothing. It saves no one. It prevents no processing, stops no grinding wheels, empties no quotas. But it exists, stubborn and ineradicable, in the spaces between the machinery of oppression. A ghost of conscience in a civilization that has murdered its own soul and transformed it into writing fluid. And in the end, that may be humanity's true legacy in the 41st millennium. Not the Imperium they built or the wars they fought or the worlds they conquered, but the simple, stubborn, utterly pointless refusal to forget what they sacrificed to survive. Somewhere, in some forgotten corner of some processing facility, a fresh batch of sacred ink dries on a page, spelling out a new subject's processing number. The ink is dark, perfect, blessed by 1,000 years of refinement. It will write important documents, authorize crucial decisions, record sacred prayers. But for just a moment in the darkness between the grinding wheels, someone remembers that the ink was once a person. Someone mourns what has been lost. Someone acknowledges the cost of survival in a universe that offers no alternatives. The moment passes, the wheels keep turning, the ink keeps flowing, and humanity endures, stained forever by the blood of its own conscience, writing its future in the processed remains of everyone who dared to hope it could be different. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and ink, sacred ink, forever.